When we harvest apples from our small selection of apple trees at our allotment, we often find we have too many to use at the time we harvest them. So one of the ways we like to preserve apples is by turning them into apple chips, which is simply sliced and dehydrated, such as this. The apple chips contain all the nutrients of the apple, the vitamins, but basically without the water. So they're actually quite light and they're easy to snap. And you can use them to reconstitute to make stewed apple in cooking. You can make apple pies from them once reconstituted, or you can take them out when you go for walks and hiking, and they're a lightweight snack, full of energy, full of sugar, absolutely delicious, and well worth making. And hopefully after you've watched this video you'll know how to make them too. This is the Laser 2000 dehydrator from a company called Westphalia. It's a little low-cost food dehydrator used for dehydrating things like apples, pears, tomatoes, onions, garlic, general sort of foodstuffs. As you can see, it's quite small, quite compact. Fine for the output of your sort of home, back garden, kitchen garden, or a small allotment. If you've got something like a community supported agriculture scheme, or you're running a small holding, you probably want something a little bit bigger than this, but the basic principles are the same amongst all of them. If we look at this one, it comes in sections. The top section here is the fan unit, which is a 250 watt electrically heated fan unit, and underneath that we have trays, and the trays have got a plastic mesh, easily wipe clean mesh, and this is where we put the food, sliced food, on here. And there's 5 of these trays, as you can see, stacked up on the dehydrator, and they just fit together like that. And the top section, where we've got the fan here, it draws air in through the top here, heats it and blows it out through here, and that goes into this central channel and then out through the mesh to do the dehydrating. Dehydrating takes somewhere between 8 to 10 hours, depending on what you're actually trying to dehydrate and what the humidity is like in the room that you're doing the dehydrating in. So, what we're going to need now is some equipment and some ingredients to make our apple chips. Apples, when they're first cut, will quickly oxidise and go brown. We don't want that, so what we're going to need to have is a little bit of lemon juice, because the acid in the lemon juice will counteract the oxidisation. So we'll need a bowl and some lemon juice. We also need to peel and core and slice the apples. Now we've got 2 ways of doing that. Either we can use traditional peeling knife, peeler and corer, very cheap, readily available from most shops. Does a perfectly good job, I used them for years. Or alternatively, if you want to splash the cash, or you're doing quite a lot of this, one of these can really help you. It's an automated apple peeler corer. I can show you how to use that in a few minutes. Now to actually make the chips that we're going to dehydrate. We have a chopping board here, ready to do some little bit of chopping on, and we have a bowl, and we have lemon juice. So what I'm going to do to start with, undo the lemon juice, and I'm just going to put some in the bowl. Not a huge amount, just enough to soak the apples when we've chipped them. And to start with, I'll just show you the way of chipping the apple using ordinary hand tools. So I usually start off with the apple corer. If you have one of those, they're very cheap, £1 or so in the shops, and all you do is just take it on the core, push down, cut through, and there we go. That's the core removed. So that's the core section of the apple finished with. That goes in the compost and will be good in the garden. Next, peeler, and we just want to take the skin off. This is optional really. Some of the best nutrients are in the apple are actually just under the skin. And so if you don't mind having a sort of skin on your apple chips, you can leave it on. So this is entirely optional. I find a lot of people prefer the apple chips with the skins off, but it really is just a personal preference. And there we go. So just Keep peeling, peel, 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 peel. You don't have to be super accurate. That's it, and then we'll just cut a little bit at the bottom off. Okay, now if there are any bad bits on the apple, you can cut them out. You can use the good bits. This apple doesn't look too bad, seems to be fine, there's no wormy bits in there, that's fine. Next, we take our little paring knife, and the idea now is we're just going to cut the apple into slices. Each slice no more than about 5 millimeters thick, so you're, you know, something like that. Yeah. And you can either put them in whole like this, or I tend to cut them in half, because it just means that you can put more in the same space, because they'll sort of fit over each other like that. And when you've taken a slice, put the apples into the lemon juice. So we'll just do a few more slices. There we go. I'll take those and put the small bits straight in. Cut any bigger bits in half. I say you don't have to be super accurate, just as long as they're roughly that sort of thickness, you're fine and dandy. If you find this one, for example, we've gone a bit wonky there, a bit thick, so all I'm going to do is just even it up a little bit. So there we go, that's about the thickness we want. And the same with the other half. There we go. The more consistent you can make them, the better, which is one of the advantages of the tool I'll be showing you in a second, because that does it very consistently. And now what we need is a dehydrator. There it is. So the dehydrator has these shelves, and we'll swoosh the apple round in the lemon juice, and then it's a simple case of taking the pieces of apple and arranging them on the dehydrator. Leave a little bit of gaps between them, but you can make it fairly dense, something like that. That's fine. You just keep on putting them in. It's a bit of a tedious operation, but the whole process of making the apple chips, really the construction of it only takes 20 minutes or so, because most of the time in making the apple chips is just letting the dehydrator dehydrate them. So that's the kind of way we fill it up. Now on to the automated tool. Okay, well, we've done some apples by hand using hand tools, and if you want to, you can do all your apples like that, that's fine. But if you find you've got quite a bit to process, you might want to invest in one of these. This one comes from Lakeland Plastics in England, and basically it's a standard design. It's been around since the Victorian era. What you have is a suction cup here, which locks the thing down onto the bench so it isn't going to move. We have a little lever here that you can pull back that releases this spiral thread, and on the spiral thread we simply take our apple and put it on. I tend to put them on with the bottom end towards the back. I don't know whether that really makes very much difference, but that's the way I usually do it. And basically you just have to push them back in to unlock that there. And the idea now is this area here, we have a spring loaded blade, and as we rotate the handle, the apple moves towards the blade, and at that point contacts the blade, and the blade will now start peeling the apple. And this second blade at the back here, when the apple gets up to it, will core the apple, and there's another blade just here which will slice the apple. So we peel, core and slice all in one go. and that's it, done. And there we are. We end up with a little spiral of apple pieces. And then what I tend to do at this point is get my knife and just slice straight through them. And there we have our apple slices ready to put in the lemon juice, which I have in the bowl at the back there. And all we need to do then is just pull the blade back, and it will usually pull... Oh, that one broke. It's quite a hard apple, that one. Take the core off, and we're ready for the next apple. Ready to go again. Much faster than peeling, trust me. Okay, we now have the layers of apple chips in the dehydrator. You can see there's several layers in there. Now it's a simple matter that we just basically put the lid on the dehydrator, which has the fan unit in it, which we've already seen. That's this unit here. There we go, there's the fan unit. And plug it in. So it goes on like that, and I'll plug it in a second, and it needs to be on then for 8 to 10 hours. So what I tend to do is leave it on overnight. Well, let's get it plugged in. It's a bit noisy, but if you've got an outhouse or a shed, it can sit out there. I tend to put it in my spare bedroom. I can sleep perfectly adequately with it, with the door closed. Okay, our 8 to 10 hours is up, and we'll take the lid off. Ta-da! Finished apple chips. Now, at this point they're quite warm, so what I tend to do is leave them for about 10 to 15 minutes just to cool down. They're perfectly edible now, but basically if we want them to be stored in plastic boxes, if you leave them for 10 to 15 minutes to cool down, you'll have less chance of condensation forming in the box, and they'll be dry and nice and crispy. So what we want to do now is just leave them, and then 10 to 15 minutes later just pop them off of the rack here, and they'll come off quite easily usually. If they stick, you just flex the rack slightly and they'll pop off, and 10 to 15 minutes time, pop them in a container. Done! Apple chips. Cheers!